So, if I suspect that my child has an eating disorder, what's the first step that I take?
Yeah, well, absolutely a GP visit.
Right.
Yeah, that getting to the GP, having a full physical done, so everything from height and weight to blood pressure and pulse and full blood count. Be a little bit prepared. Like it's useful to go in with a bit of a list of your concerns.
That's good. That's a good idea.
Yeah, noting that down and saying this is what I'm seeing and this is why I'm concerned. Not all GPs are familiar with eating disorders. It's a big field and it's tricky and complex. So, and they might also want to see an older adolescent by themselves. So try to insist on, that's fine, but I'd like to see you by myself as well. So you get both in there. Because again, like we talked about, the eating disorder can be quite tricky and hoodwink the doctor even, saying I'm fine. And and even with anorexia, they can claim that I know I'm too thin, I'm trying kind of thing. So they might think, okay, not anorexia because they don't have a fear of weight gain.
Right.
But in fact, the fear of weight gain comes out as soon as you try to weight gain. So you want to work with the GP a bit, but if your instincts are saying they're not getting it,
right,
get a second opinion.
So if you did go along to the GP and the GP happened to say something in regard to sort of like you may look of normal weight, but you
know yourself.
You know you're in yourself, and your child is showing all of these sort of signs. What would you do in that situation?
Well, I guess we have had parents that have, by the time they get to us, have said it's been a long journey and they've had to go back several times to the GP. You could try a second time with your own GP and say, look, this is, one of the most simple things, if you can get any previous heights and weights, it's why we've moved away from BMI for adolescents, that it's like the Plunkett book, we follow centiles now, and so if you have any previous heights and weights from age 8, 9, 10, that shows where they were tracking what we call premorbidly before becoming unwell, and that shows they might have fallen off their centile if they were normally on the 50th centile, but now they're on the 40th, and they can drop off very quickly, and that's why we've changed the criteria around anorexia, and that they don't necessarily lose weight, they just don't gain as they should have. So a young person, boys in particular, have to gain about 8 kgs between the ages of 11 and 12. The really steep growth curves, right? Those big gains, and same with girls, it's about 6 kgs a year, 11 to 12. So you can imagine on those centile charts, they're just flat lines. They don't drop, but they don't gain as they should. And suddenly, in 6 months' time, they're 3-4 kgs underweight, which can be a lot for an adolescent because they're not kind of big people anyway. So so I think you're right that GPs don't always catch that somebody that is a BMI equivalent of 21 can still meet criteria for anorexia if they're meant to be a BMI 23. Genetically. And so it is going back to that.
Well, how would if a GP recognises that perhaps this young person does have an eating disorder, what would that
happen there? Okay. So I'd like to think for the younger adolescents, the 12, 13, 14, it's a referral straight to our service or a specialist mental health service. For older adolescents, again, if they think, no, I know I've got a problem and I'm going to turn it around, the GP might give them some time to turn around, or the parents to help them do that. And I guess my only advice there would be to keep it really tight. Right. So if the young person is motivated and they're scared and they want to get back to their sport, and so maybe they can, with their parents' help, just get back on track and hopefully doing weekly weigh-ins with the GP and get that weight gain going.
Would there be presentation of perhaps younger? Sometimes younger?
Absolutely. We do, they will present as early as 8 and 9-year-olds. Right. But again, that's not something that they can do for themselves. I guess I'm distinguishing between young and, so you have the young ones that you think really need to be referred straight away to services. The older ones, the GPs might give them a chance to turn around and do some weekly weigh-ins, and if they're turning it around, that's great. But keep it really tight, and if you're not seeing that happening, you know, in 3 to 4 weeks' time, go back to the GP and say, no, I want that referral, please. You know,
Right.
and just really insisting on that. And yeah, once the referral's in, then you still need to be followed by the GP.
Right.
There may be a bit of a wait, and so keep those weekly or fortnightly appointments happening, and hopefully the GP could give you some websites to go to start.
Some support during
Yes,
that.
getting some support while you're on the wait list.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. And then, so then the referral sort of happens, and sometimes, I mean, that can be quite a long wait, just because of the pressure on the services and that
That's
sort of thing,
right.
to actually see somebody. And so during that time, there would be that constant monitoring,
That's right. The
taking
GP's
of bloods.
responsible for that and
Right.
following up. Yeah, and if things get worse, like, I think that, you know, things continue to deteriorate over that time while they're on the waiting list, the GP should have the kind of physical parameters for when a hospital admission is needed.
Right.
Hopefully they're amping up the weekly visits and maybe even fortnightly or twice weekly.
Right.
And if needed, an admission to hospital, and also helping you navigate that if your young person, you know, faints or you're worried about them on the weekend or evenings, just go straight to the ED department, the emergency department,
Okay.
and get them checked. And there's always a psychiatric consultant there too, so that can also help to put them into the system, and they can be followed up by child and family emergency services whilst on the wait list if needed as well, so they can have some immediate support in the interim until they're being seen by special services.
That's good that there's always a sort of a psych consult there.